What's going on, everyone? It's Ben from Yu-Gi-Oh from Zero back with another fiber format, and I feel like we've been playing too many good decks lately. It's time to play something a bit more jank, and so here is Last Turn. Now, Last Turn is a new alternative win condition that was introduced in Legacy of Darkness, and it's basically a trap card that says this card can only be activated when your opponent's turn, when your life points are 1,000 or less. You select one monster on your side of the field and send all other cards on the field in their respective owner's hands to their respective graveyards. After that, your opponent selects and special summons one monster from their deck in face-up attack position and attacks your selected monster. Any battle damage from this battle is treated as 0. The player whose monster remains alone on the field at the end phase of this turn wins the duel. Any other case results in a draw. Now, this is a bit of a convoluted card, but basically, the things that you have to know when considering this deck are a couple things with this. Basically, you've got to have a way to get down below 1,000 life points. You've also got to have a way to stop your opponent from actually winning this battle here. There are a couple ways to do this. In terms of the life point reduction side of things, we've got Inspection, which is a continuous spell. This says during your opponent's standby phase, you can randomly select one card in your opponent's hand and look at the cost of 500 life points. This isn't once per turn, so you can use this multiple times during the standby phase. Just keep doing it until you get down below 1,000, and then you're at a point where you can actually last turn. In addition, the deck can sometimes just get to that point like on its own. You don't necessarily need to have something like Inspection. You will likely be bleeding some damage from some hits that your opponent will get in, and you've also got things like Solemn Judgment, which can also get you down below that 1,000 life point threshold. Now, for winning the battle, that's a bit tougher, but there is a monster released in a previous set that can help you out with that, and that's Jowgen the Spiritualist. If you have Jowgen face up on your field when you activate last turn, your opponent will not actually be able to special summon out a monster from their deck, and so that will enable you to win the battle with Jowgen on your side of the field. Now, there are some complications to this. For instance, if you activate last turn in the standby phase or the draw phase of your opponent's turn, and your opponent has a Sinister Serpent running around, they will be able to add that Sinister Serpent back to hand during the standby phase, summon it out, and hit over Jowgen. In addition, if they've got a Sangan or a Witch on field, or some way to get it back on field, for instance, if they chain Call of the Haunted to your last turn activation and bring back a Sangan or a Witch, then they will be able to get a search off that and then normal summon out whatever monster they've got if they haven't normal summoned that turn already. Despite this, this combo can be very devastating when it actually goes off, and if you watch the local stream for the Fiber locals that we did the other week, we actually did manage to see someone basically FDK with this deck on turn 1. So it can definitely win the game out of nowhere and be very good. But before we dive into the games showing off how good this set can be, let's dive into the card by card. So for the monsters, I already mentioned the Jowgens here, which are the main monster piece of your combo, but there are some other cards here that can help you get to those. Sangan and Witch can, of course, search out your Jowgen, and these Shining Angels here can bring out Jowgen directly. In addition, we've also got a Magician of Faith to recycle back a powerful spell like a Graceful Charity or Pot of Greed to draw deeper into your deck, as you really do need to draw into your combo pieces, and the Inspections and the last turns are unfortunately unsearchable. So these are pretty necessary to draw deeper into your deck, and the Magician of Faith can help you get back into them. We've also got an Exiled Force here to deal with a problematic opponent's monster. And I do think that monster removal is important in this deck, which is why we're playing it, and also explains some of the other spells that we are playing here. We're playing a Change of Heart, which is definitely on the iffier side of the power spells for this deck in particular, but the way we figure it is if we can potentially Change of Heart like a Magician of Faith that our opponent has and get back a powerful spell, it'll be worth it in that regard. If our opponent does have a major aggressive pressure on field, then we can potentially Change of Heart one of their monsters and beat over another one of them. We've also got a Confiscation, a Dark Hole, 2 Graceful Charity, 2 Inspection that I mentioned earlier, a Monster Reborn to potentially bring back Jowgens, Painful Choice to get whatever pieces of our combo we need, or just to deck thin a bit more. This card is a bit iffy because there isn't quite the sort of guaranteed 5 that you'll be able to get whatever card you need to hand. But I do still think it's good for deck thinning, and this deck really does want some deck thinning, so I think it's good in that regard. We've also got Pot of Greed here, Raigeki 3 Scapegoat, as it does help you stall out the game a bit. We've also got a Forceful Sentry and an Upstart Goblin to help you draw deeper into the deck. Now you'll note that we aren't playing Duo, we're just playing a Forceful Sentry and Confiscation. This is because these 2 cards give you the most hand knowledge and potentially can send back something troublesome like a Jinzo, for instance. Now, you could potentially play Delinquent Duo as well because it does come with a life point cost, so you can do that to artificially reduce your life points, but I value the hand knowledge a lot more And so that's why we're playing these. For the trap lineup, we've got a Call of the Haunted and Imperial Order, and then beyond that, we've got some just very specific cards for this deck. 3 Jar of Greeds to draw deeper into it. The 2 Lost Turn that I mentioned, I guess Mirror Force is another staple card here, but it's very good at, getting rid of your opponent's aggressive pressure. We've also got 3 Solemn Judgment to negate anything that we really need to negate, and we've got 3 Uboku to stay alive for longer. Also, Uboku can be used to force draws in certain situations. For instance, if you know that your opponent is going to get a search with something like the Sangan or the Witch, then you can Uboku to just force a draw in case things aren't going your way. So it's another outcome that, can happen in this deck, and it's one that can be potentially pretty good. For the side deck, we actually have a Smokescreen side here, and this is taking a page from the only other person that I've seen actually experiment with this deck in this format, which is Ghost of 41st Past on the YGO from Zero Discord server. If you want to play any of the games in this format, then that's the place to do it. But I've seen them sort of experiment with this deck on the local stream there, and they went into a Smokescreen side, so I figured that I'd try out something similar here. So we've got the 2 Bazoo, 2 Kaiku, 2 Gemini Elf as our beater triangle. We've actually got 3 Giant Rat instead of 3 Tomato, the reasoning here being that we're just trying to get a lot more aggressive, so we want to bring out something like an Injection Fairy Lily or an Exiled Force with this. So that's why we're playing with that. Maybe you could include Tomatoes here instead, but I like the Rats if we're going super aggressive. We've also got 2 Lost Wills here, and these could potentially be in the main deck to combo with something like an Exiled Force, just to get out your Jowgen really easily. But since we've got the 3 Shining Angels, I didn't really think that's necessary. We've also got 2 Noblemans of Crossset since we're going super aggressive, and we've also got a Snatch Seal to finish out our side deck lineup here. The Fusion deck isn't anything special. We're never going into it. And so that's basically the deck as it is. This may seem like really weird compared to a lot of other decks in the format. For instance, there are only 10 monsters here. There's a lot of bricky combo pieces here as well. But I do think that this does have some potential to actually manage to take some games. And so let's test it out to see how it actually does. Okay, we've got a game against Aratos here, frequent guest on the channel, always a pleasure to have them on. We're playing the Last Turn deck, and we did manage to win the Rock, Paper, Scissors, which can be really good. We did manage to see on the Fiber local stream, this deck actually basically win turn 1. Unfortunately, this hand doesn't look like it will quite do it, although we do have Graceful to draw a bit deeper. We got to think about exactly what we want to discard here, but I think I am going to pitch the Shining Angel because we've already got Jowgen in hand. And I think I'll also pitch a Waboku here since we do have another copy in hand. I mean, Waboku is very, very strong, but the other cards in hand are similarly powerful. We're going to set this Magician of Faith to potentially get back the Graceful Charity there. And then we're just going to set a Jar of Greed and Waboku, pass back to them. If they've got like Harpies, Feather Duster, or Heavy Storm, we can chain both of these and get some value off that. They're going to go for a Gemini Elf here, and they're going to set a couple just in case like Morphing Jar or something and attack into Magician of Faith. We're going to grab back this Graceful Charity here. We can use that next turn, which is very nice. And they're going to fire a Forceful Sentry, so we do get a little bit punished for this play. Not too much, though. We still got a pretty good hand, but now our opponent does know about it, so they can have the read that we are on a last turn sort of deck since we have Jowgen. But they'll send back the Graceful Charity. And Raigeki is a pretty good draw here. I think we just want to set the Sangan. We'll set a Mirror Force as well, just in case they get super aggressive here. And they're going to go for the Harpies Feather Duster now, unfortunately. So they did have the read that that was Mirror Force because, I mean, they saw it in hand. But they were going to play around that as long as they knew about it anyways. So I think this is fine. They're just going to attack into the Sangan to flip it up. And they're going to pass back to us. We're going to set this Call of the Haunt and pass back to them. We don't really feel the need to use Confiscation right now. I mean, maybe we should have just to see what they're on, but I like saving Confiscation for when we know that our opponent might have something problematic for us in hand. So yeah, I'll just wait till then. Potentially sniping like a Jinzo would be very good late in the game. We're going to search out a Sinister Serpent with the Sangan here as a recurable body. It doesn't seem like our opponent has many other monsters in hand here. Since we draw Imperial Order and we might want to set that up, we are going to go for a Confiscation here and just see what they've got. And that will indeed go through. So we get to see that they've got a Change of Heart and a Reinforcement of the army. I think what we want to do is get rid of the Change of Heart, as that can be a bit more annoying for setting up an aggressive pressure here. Reinforcement will get them another monster, which is annoying. But I feel fine about that since we do have the Raigeki to clear it. So yeah, I'm gonna take away the change of heart. I mean, we've got Imperial Order for both of those, but I don't necessarily want to use the Imperial Order too early, if that makes sense. I'm fine saving it for later. Our opponent's going to normal summon this Gearfried that they drew, so it turns out they are on the Gearfried Blast with Chain style deck. They're going to attack over the Sinister Serpent, and we will take that 1900. Again, a part of this deck does want to be down around 1,000 life points or less, so, you know, we will take this chip damage and be fine with it. We draw a Shining Angel, which can help block for a little bit. We're going to set that. We actually forgot to add the Sinister Serpent, but it's ultimately fine here because we can bait them into using Reinforcement to get Exiled Force. So our misplay kind of helps us out a little bit here. It could come back to bite us if our opponent does have a way to tribute off Exiled Force and then bring out a Kaiku. But I don't really think there's a way to do that, and our opponent's just going to attack in for a fair amount of damage, dropping us down to 1,400. And honestly, that is a fine place to be. We do have ways to stall here. We've got the Call of the Haunted to bring back a monster potentially, although that would put us in a pretty bad spot. We also are going to get the Sinister Serpent back this time. Make sure we don't forget about that. We're going to go for Pot of Greed now, and that's pretty decent here. We're going to fire this Raigeki just to clear their board. We're going to set this Sinister Serpent and then set a Jar of Greed, pass back to them. They've got something like Nolman of Crossout or something. We do have Imperial Order to stop that a bit. Our opponent's just going to set one, pass back to us. We draw last turn, which is very nice here. We don't quite have the combo online, though, because we aren't quite under 1,000. So we're just going to set the Solemn Judgment and a last turn. I feel pretty insulated against mass spell and trap removal, especially since our opponent's already used up the Harpy's Feather Duster. And setting two cards like this sort of disguises this for in case they have a, blind MST and they hit the last turn. We also do have Imperial Order if they do go after the last turn with their MST. They are going to fire MST here and the end phase, trying to hit the Solemn Judgment. So luckily, we did actually get a bit lucky there in what they're sniping. So we could just let this go through. I think I am actually going to activate this Imperial Order, though, just to try and preserve as many resources as possible. Also, Imperial Order being up gives us an opportunity to decrease our life points by 700. But unfortunately, they do have the Mystical Space Siphon for that. So they'll be able to clear two of our back row here. Luckily, we still do have the last turn. We also have the Call of the Haunted, which can potentially keep us alive for a little bit longer. Our opponent's going to go for a Graceful Charity here. I really wish we had the Imperial Order to stop that, but unfortunately, I mean, there was no real way around it if they had double MST. They're just going to set two and pass back to us. We draw another Solemn Judgment, which is very nice. We can have our life points and also just sort of have more insulation for our play. But it's going to bring out a Bazoo, and we could indeed Solemn Judgment this. The reason I don't is if they've got any follow-up to this Bazoo, then we just potentially hard lose the game here. So I'm fine just sort of letting that go through. They'll hit over the Serpent here. We draw Graceful Charity, which is very nice. We'll get back that Serpent here. And we're going to go for the Graceful. They've got Imperial Order, and we are indeed going to Solemn Judgment this, as this will drop our life points down to 700. And also we'll get some good draws here. We draw another copy of Last Turn, so we're even more insulated. We're going to bring out this Jowgen. The reason we're not too worried about this is because we do have a Call of the Haunted to bring back the Jowgen in case they do have like Torrential Tribute or something. And, if they do that, and then they've got like a Solemn or the last MST for the Call of the Haunted, then we're kind of in a bad spot, but we do have at least Woboku to survive for a little bit longer. But I'm not too worried about that. We're going to bring out the Jowgen. They're going to say that's fine. We're going to set a Woboku and another last turn, so we're like double insulated now with that last turn play there. We're going to set this Change of Heart, pass back to them. They're going to blind snipe one of our last turns in the end phase, which is unfortunate, but luckily we do have another. And I do fire the last turn here. The reason I do this is because they don't have a response to this. We can then chain Woboku, and if the last card in hand is a Sinister Serpent, we at least draw. But I don't want to let it get to main phase 1. Then they have priority to summon out a Jinzo and shut off all our traps here, because then we just hard lose the game. So I do go for this. It's a little bit risky. I mean, we could get a draw here, but if they don't have a Sinister Serpent, which it looks like they don't, they just have a Graceful Charity, then this will indeed be the end of the game. And it is indeed the end of the game. So we were able to pull off the combo without the inspection. So that was really awesome to see. As I said, in the deck breakdown, we do side hard into these sort of aggressive strategies. So we side out the Jowgens, the Shining Angels, the last turn, the inspections. I think we also side out some of the Wobokus as well. And we just go full conversion side into a super aggressive deck. So let's see how that actually managed to turn out for us. If our opponent does side super hard into countering last turn, then I feel pretty good about this. Opponent's going to open up with a Forceful Sentry and send back this Pot of Greed, which is a bit unfortunate for us. They're then going to summon out a Tomato, set 1, pass back to us. That shuts off our Nobleman, which is very unfortunate. We could potentially summon out Giant Rat and just crash into their Tomato, which might be the move. But the last thing, I mean, yeah, I guess it might be the move, because if they bring out a Tomato, we can bring out Exiled Force, read off Exiled Force, pop the Tomato, and then we're feeling okay. Then our opponent can just get in for some damage, though. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to set the Rat, pass back to our opponent, but this does die to any monster with a higher attack than 1500, basically. So it is a bit risky, especially when our opponent can just grab a Gearfried with Rhoda, and that is indeed what they're going to do. They're going to get that Gearfried hit over the Rat, and now we do lose a Recruiter Crash because we've only got 2 Rats. Or no, we've only got 1 Rat left in deck after this, in fact. So yeah, we're feeling pretty bad about this. So we will just bring out the other Rat for deck thinning purposes. Our opponent is also able to deck thin here. But I think we really do need to deck thin to draw something good to get us out of this. We're actually not going to use the effect. The only target we have left in deck is Exiled Force, which would be pretty bad to bring out right now. Our opponent's just going to attack in with the Sangan and pass back to us. We draw Imperial Order, which is pretty nice, but it doesn't quite get us out of this situation. We are just going to bring out Injection Fairy Lily, attack into their Gearfried, and unfortunately they do have Blast with Chain. And this actually brings up a very interesting ruling question in that, like, can they activate Blast with Chain and pop Lily after I use Lily's effect to cause me to lose 2,000 points of damage? And after going back and forth on this and looking into it a bit more, we eventually decided that it does not actually work that way. If we do use Blast with Chain in the damage step after Lily, then Lily will still get popped by Blast with Chain eventually, but that'll be after the battle actually is finished resolving. So Gearfried would die there. So they're going to choose to activate Blast with Chain before that happens, and Lily will indeed die there. We're just going to set Imperial Order and Solemn Judgment. I feel like this is an okay hand here. They do have Harpies, but we've got the Imperial Order. Unfortunately, they do have Mystical Space Typhoon, so that will clear that. No point to Solemn Judgmenting that Mystical Space Typhoon, in my opinion, as we basically lose the game at that point. They're going to set 1, pass back to us. We draw Gemini Elf, which can clear the Gearfried here, as long as they don't have anything to deal with it. We're going to attack into it, and luckily that does go through. We're just going to pass back to them, as they do know our hand exactly as being Witch and Nobleman, so there's no point in setting Nobleman as a bluff right now. And our opponent's going to fire a Dark Hole, and that's really bad for us. They'll be able to get out a Witch here, which is a bit unfortunate. They'll attack in for 1,100 here, dropping us down to 3,100, and they'll pass back to us. We draw another Nobleman of Crossout, which is not the best right now. Maybe we shouldn't have Noblemans in the super aggressive side because there aren't too many flip monsters that our opponent's going to bring in here against the last turn deck, but that's good knowledge for the future, I guess. Our opponent's going to summon out Kaiku, Change of Heart, or Witch, and that will just be the end of the game. So a bit of an unfortunate game 2 there, but you know, that can happen in these sorts of decks. Given that our opponent didn't really seem to side super hard against last turn, I'm actually going to side back into last turn. I think maybe their side deck isn't adjusted to the deck. So we could potentially win another game with last turn. Also, I feel like it's more interesting to the viewers if I go for last turn twice here. So we are going to go for the last turn deck in game 3 here. And this is a pretty decent opener here. We're actually just going to start by setting this Sangan, setting Jar of Greed, setting Waboku, and then setting a Scapegoat, passing to our opponent. All of these are chainable, so we feel very fine about, you know, if our opponent has Harpy's Feather Duster or Heavy Storm. I feel pretty good about this. Our opponent's going to go for a Graceful Charity here, drawing 3, discarding 2, and they're going to bring out a Sangan. That's fine by us. They unfortunately do have the Nobleman of Crossout, which is really unfortunate. We really wanted a Sangan into Serpent to then pair with our Graceful Charity in the future, but alas. I mean, at least now that Nobleman's gone for other potential sets that we'd have in the future, like the Sinister Serpent, but it's still a little bit unfortunate for us. We draw another Waboku, which is okay. We're going to go for a Graceful Charity here. And we draw the last turn. That's pretty decent. We're going to pitch the Monster Reborn as, you know, I feel okay about our chances of getting Jowgen on field with last turn. We also do have Magician of Faith to get back the Reborn if we want it. But as is, we're just going to set the Magician of Faith, set a Solemn, and then set a last turn here, pass back to our opponent. We could have potentially had the Solemn Judgment online for if they knocked our Sangan earlier. Maybe that would have been the right choice to do. But I feel more confident doing this, given that they probably didn't have Harpy's Feather Duster, given they would have used it last turn. They're going to go for Raigeki here, and I think we do have to Solemn Judgment this, because we really do need that Graceful Charity back. Opponent's going to set one just in case it's Morphing Jar. They're going to attack into the Magician of Faith. We're going to grab back a Charity, and they'll attack in for another 1,000. Now, I'm feeling okay about this, because we've only got 1,500 life points to go before we're in our range here. We're going to go for a Jar of Greed here, get the Scapegoat, go for a Graceful Charity here, draw 3. Unfortunately, none of those are a Jowgen. But yeah, we just got to set this Witch, I think, and then set a Graceful Charity pass. And we could have set the Shining Angel to get out another Shining Angel and thin our deck a little bit. However, our opponent does have an Exiled Force, and we do know that they are on a Reinforcement the Army Exiled Force build. It's a bit rough to set the Angel into that. So that's why I set the Witch here. Maybe it's a mistake, maybe not. We'll have to find out. Opponent's just going to set one attack in with the Sangan, and it is Witch. They're then going to bring out this Gearfried here, switch the Witch to defense, and pass back to us. We do have Change of Heart here, but I don't really think there's a point in using it now, so we're just going to go for a Graceful Charity here. Now, here we've got a bit of an interesting sort of set of decisions here. Either way, I think we discard the Serpent because that's a free discard, but we've got to decide what we're actually going to do on this following turn. We do actually have some lines to get us into that under 1,000 range here. If we potentially summon out Shining Angel and switch Witch to attack Witch into the Gearfried, that gets us down to 700. Crash Shining Angel twice into the Gearfried, that gets us down to the 1,000. That brings out Jowgen here, which will be pretty decent. It also potentially sets up like the Waboku last turn draw here, because we don't really have a good way to clear the Sangan and Witch here. And if our opponent does have either one of those out on field, then they will be able to get a search here. So this game could just go to a draw very quickly if we want to do that. In hindsight, maybe that would be the correct play here. So we do discard the Change of Heart because this might be the play that we're going for. And it looks like we are just going to bring out the Shining Angel. And we're just going to not do quite that play since we do need to clear the Sangan and Witch. But we're going to try and clear the Sangan and Witch this way and then set up for that play next turn. Unfortunately, they do have Ceasefire here, which is a great tech card against last turn. Because last turn has to get so low that chaining Ceasefire can just end the game out of nowhere. And that's what happens here. We bring out the Shining Angel, and that provides exactly enough damage to kill us here. We can't really use a Waboku or anything else because that will just kill us. Waboku doesn't protect against effect damage. So a very good way to end the game. Very, very neat tech against last turn, and definitely shows one of the flaws with that deck. But I really do like this deck a lot, and I think that it does have great potential in like the rogue category in this format. I think that it's a deck that's very hard to play against, and it's very, very flexible. For instance, you saw here that we could have potentially set up a draw fairly easily with the Wabokus in the last turns. And, you know, game one was just so dominating for being able to set up that draw. And we didn't even need something like Inspection. Although I still do think that Inspection does have a place in these builds. But I'm curious what your thoughts on this deck are down in the comments below. Let me know. I always like discussing these things with y'all. And I think that Last Turn is a very interesting deck. So there definitely are other ways to build it, other directions it can go, and I'm curious to hear what your thoughts on that are in the comments. Also, if you enjoyed this video, please do subscribe to the channel. We're almost at 750 subscribers. I've got a very special video planned for 750 subscribers, but we've been right at that brink for quite a while now, so I'd really like to reach 750 subscribers soon. So if you enjoy my content and want to help me reach that goal, definitely do subscribe. Also, if you enjoyed the video, as always, please do leave a like down below. It really helps out the channel a lot. But until next time, I've been Ben from YGO from Zero, and I'm signing off.